Hello and welcome back to another update where I cover the latest developments throughout the front line in the Russo-Ukrainian war. We start out in the Sumy region. As you see in the title, the Russians have entered the Sumy region across from the Russian border towards the village of Rishivka here in the northern parts of the Sumy region, north of the city itself. This is an interesting angle to enter the country from. Previously, I made an analysis with history legends where I expected the Russians to attack in the direction of Sumy itself, in the direction of Kharkiv itself, in between the two in the direction of Poltava, and south in the direction of Kupiansk. I never expected them to launch an attack in the north. The interesting part is that we are not really sure how large of an offensive operation this is, or if other villages are also included in this operation, north or south of it. All we do know is that Kadyrov, the leader of the Chechen forces in Ukraine, as well as in Chechnya, has sat and released this footage with the statement that they have captured the village. And from this video footage, we see one singular frame from it where we see one of the signs of the village. So we do know that these Chechen soldiers, and reportedly also Russian soldiers on top of those, entering Ukraine in the Sumy region and taking control over Rishivka. We have to wait for further confirmation and further information as to exactly what sort of operation this is. Is it just some cross-border raids? Is it a large operation where they will launch attacks similar to the Kharkiv region? Or is it even a larger offensive operation bigger than that of the Kharkiv region? At the same time as these reports are released about Rishivka, there are reports that the Sumy region is entirely without electricity or power. This means that this could be a larger operation, as this is a result of multiple strikes along the time of this war, but also it is likely a direct attack, whether it is a hacking attack or similar, where they simply cut off everything for a small period of time, where they try to disrupt all communication within the region to allow these Russian soldiers to make initial advances. We'll have more information once the situation has become clearer and time will tell what has happened. Moving on to the Donetsk region, we also see an intensification of offensive operations by the Russians in this area. Starting out into the north of Soledar, the Russians have not just been doing positional fighting southwest of Rustalivka, but also to the east of the village, where they've captured this fortified position and have reached the outskirts of it. And with this, we see multiple axes of attack by the Russians, both in the direction of the east of Rustalivka and to the southwest of the village, as they attempt to continue these positional fighting towards the village to storm it and gain control of it. In the direction of the Chesevya micro-district, there is this video released of Russian flag being raised in the ruins of the micro-district. It is unclear exactly where this flag was raised, but I think it is reasonable to say that the final buildings in the micro-district are being cleared, and the Russians will likely soon gain full control over it and push onwards towards the forest patches and beyond the canal line. Further south here, west and northwest of Avdiivka, there are several Russian advances. North of Arkhangelsk, the Russians have captured several fortified positions of the Ukrainians southwest of Kalinove. This is a two-pronged attack east of Novoalexandrivka towards the north of Arkhangelsk, where they are flanking the Ukrainian fortified positions, and north in the direction of Kalinove, where they are also flanking the Ukrainian fortified positions here from the western parts of them. As I mentioned in the previous analysis, these fortified positions are facing the eastern direction. This means that the western direction is more prone to Russian attacks, as they would be weaker in facing that direction. And therefore, we're seeing the Russian assaults from the western direction, instead of going directly head-on, where they would be fighting at a height disadvantage and directly facing the Ukrainian fortified positions. In the direction of Novoalexandrivka, the Russians have advanced on a wide front both to the northern flank of it within the town itself, leaving the majority of it in the gray zone, as the Ukrainians have withdrawn from the central parts of the village towards the fortified positions southwest and west of it to stay within the fortified areas and prevent taking huge losses within the village itself. The Russians have also flanked the village from the south, where they're moving directly head on towards the Ukrainian fortified positions, likely to hit the Ukrainians while they're withdrawing to these positions and trying to catch them off guard. So with this, we see that there are multiple assaults by the Russians both north of Arkhangelsk and in the direction of Novoalexandrivka. Further south in the direction of Umansk towards Novoselivka Persia, there are numerous advances here as well, where the Russians are advancing towards the forest lines, where we see geolocated footage both here northeast and northwest of Umansk of recent Russian advances, as they are being targeted by Ukrainian artillery and FPV drones in their attempt to push towards Novoselivka Persia. The Russians are now moving from forest line to forest line in the direction of Novoselivka Persia, slowly inching towards it along the main road and the flanks to prevent the Ukrainians flanking their advances through the main road. And at the same time, we also see advances in positional fighting to the east of Novoselivka Persia, combined with the assault towards Novoalexandrivka and Sokil. We see that the situation has returned to active offensive operations by the Russians as they continue their offensive northwest of Avdiivka. Combining the recent reactivation of the Russian forces there with a potential assault or new offensive north of Sumy, we see that the situation has drastically changed. The same here in the direction of Krasnoyarivka. We see geolocated footage of the central parts here in the western outskirts of Krasnoyarivka. The Russians are fighting over the next apartment complexes, the final ones within the central parts of Krasnoyarivka. There are also reports of the Russians capturing the southwestern outskirts of the city has been captured by the Russians, meaning that the Russians have secured that part as well. With this, we see that the situation is rapidly developing in the favor of the Russians across the front. It is reported that the Russians have deemed that the situation right now, where the Ukrainians have relocated a lot of their troops to the Kharkiv direction in attempts to conduct counterattacks, which has left returned the front to a stalemate, has forced the Russians to move on to the next phase of the offensive operations, where they will activate both the eastern front and the northern front in the direction of Sumy to further spread the Ukrainian forces out to prevent them from conducting counterattacks or even leaving some areas less defended, allowing for a Russian breakthrough somewhere across the front. The size and the potential scale of this offensive in Sumy remains unknown, and that leaves a huge issue for the Ukrainians. They do not know if this will be an assault towards Kiev to end the war, or if it will simply be another Kharkiv incursion where they create a small buffer zone with a depth of 8 or 10 kilometers and draw the Ukrainian forces in that direction to then double up the Ukrainian losses that they're taking in Kharkiv in the Sumy direction as well. And if the Ukrainians have not prepared proper defenses in the Sumy direction, similar to the Kharkiv direction, which is reported to me according to my Ukrainian sources that they have not properly prepared the defenses in the Sumy region, we would likely see a similar scenario to the Kharkiv direction, where the Ukrainians will simply be unable to stop the Russians at the first line of defense because it simply does not exist. At the same time, we see footage like this where the Russians have improved their capacity and capabilities with the FAB bombs. We see 3 FAB bombs being dropped almost simultaneously. The first one comes a bit earlier than the second and third ones, but we see that the accuracy and the timing of these bombs have significantly improved with time. We saw a similar strike on a forest line in the direction of Lipsy, where the Russians heavily bombarded a forest line with Ukrainian defensive soldiers with FAB bombs accurately and well timed. This is something that has completely changed since the start of the war, and as the Russians continue to improve, their ability to break through the Ukrainian front increases in likelihood as well. At the same time, we see Ukrainian drone strikes going deeper and deeper into Russian territory, where this Su-57, located approximately 500 kilometers away from the border between Russia and Ukraine, was attempted to be struck by drones. It is reported that this was damaged, but it was not destroyed. The extent of the damage is unknown, as well as these drones did not hit it directly, but hit nearby it. So it is more likely that they were hit by debris the plane was hit by debris rather than any direct strike from these drones. But at the same time, the fact that these planes, after 2 years and 4 months almost of this war, are yet to have shelters is honestly mind-blowing to me, and shows that although a lot of military officials in the Russian army have been arrested for corruption, there is still many issues in it. And with that, the conclusion is the Russians may have started a new offensive in the Sumy direction with the capture of the village of Rishivka by Chechen troops and Russian troops as well. We see that the Russians have started a new operation in the Sumy direction, and this could have a significant effect on the frontline situation across the whole front. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and check out my page for additional content. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day.